Hi, my name is Eric George, and I am going to just kind of run through my Module 1 assignment. And just starting off, who am I? I was born in Wichita, Kansas, raised here, grew up here. Then I went to Regis University in college, where I got my bachelor's in history and education. After spending some time in Denver, I moved back to Wichita. I'm the youngest in my family. I had two older brothers, so got to bear the brunt of a lot of grief growing up. My career, this is my I just finished my fourth year teaching. I teach at Wichita Southeast High School. I have history classes and a social justice class, and I've been coaching tennis for about 2 years now. So my interests, pretty much anything relating to sports. Huge Chiefs fan. I got to go to the Super Bowl this year, which was a dream come true. Shockers fan. Yes, Shockers are better than KU. Go Royals, Sporting Kansas City, all that good stuff. In my spare time, I like to go and hang out at breweries with friends. So the three levels of government and the control they have in public education. First, we look at the supports that each level provides. The local side tends to support more of the day-to-day operations. They're the ones who are in charge of paying the teachers, helping the schools get what they need, supporting principals. They are in the trenches every day with schools, and most of their funding comes from local property taxes. And they actually end up supporting about close to half of the school funding. Next, we have the state level, and their primary support is kind of offering oversight um, for the various school districts within the state. They tend to delegate most of what they do to the local level, but if they need be, they can reclaim authority back. If a school is failing or not meeting the standards or a district is failing, then the state can step in and do some different things. Then we have the creation of standards. So they help determine which standards schools are going to use, what they would like to see taught in the state. And they also account for a little less than half of total school funding from the state level. And their funding tends to come from state income and sales tax. And then lastly, we have the federal. The federal level tends to be the most hands off. They don't actually enforce a lot of rules. They set out guidelines, um, and they offer about 10% of the funding, and that funding tends to go to the most high need areas like special education and various fields like that. So they tend to be more hands off and play an overall supporting role. So the leadership at each level kind of looks similar for state and federal, but then local kind of has its own different things. So the school board uh, oversees local policy, and it is a volunteer basis. They are elected officials, and they, in conjunction with the superintendent, help determine what policies are going to be enacted by the schools. Um, then you also have the superintendent, which is a paid position, and usually they're hired, usually by the school board. And it's their job to oversee the implementation of the policies set out by the school board. Then we go to the state level, and I focused on what it looks like here in Kansas. We have the Kansas Department of Education is the branch of the government, and they have a school board that is elected and oversees kind of the general um, uh, role of what the Kansas department does. They set out a lot of the policies, enact emergency measures if need be, things like that. And then below them, that helps, similar to the superintendent role, is your commissioner on education. And again, that is appointed and paid position. And they kind of and together the state level determines and oversees curriculum and standards and the implementation. That's the big role done by uh, the state level. And the federal side, we have the Department of Education, which is headed by the Secretary of Education, and that is a cabinet level position, so they have to be approved by the Senate. Um, And their role is to kind of ensure no student is denied education, provide funding for higher needs students, educational research, and then they promote improvement of the state and local. Like so, again, they just kind of sit back and make sure everything is kind of going to plan and these policies are being implemented. They don't get in the nitty gritty of things. And who has the most power and control? I think it's kind of a toss up between the state and local, because the state is determining so much of what the curriculum is and what they would like to see in schools. Um, and they provide such a large part of the funding. But if I had to choose between one or the other, I would say the local has the most power because they are actually implementing every day what it looks like. They are determining what that curriculum looks like, what textbooks are being used, which teachers are in the classroom. So they have the most hands on, direct experience with students. So I think they have the most power. And for our different components, for I have it across the board, um, that the local level has the most influence over each one of these. And if you just look at some of the key words, for example, in component 6.1, uh, they're implementing. Okay, it's the implement communication technology, school level governance, and operation systems that support each student's learning needs and promote the mission and vision of the school. So the local government is the one that is actually implementing it. It's done on a school level, and the local school board and superintendent are dealing with those schools every day, and they are creating the operation systems that we see within those schools. Next, the 6.2, evaluate, develop, and advocate for a data informed and equitable resourcing plan that supports school improvement and student development. Again, it's the local jurisdiction who is developing these plans using the data and figuring out what the best way is to use all this funding from the state, from the federal government, and our own local funding. What's the best way we're going to actually use that? What's the most equitable? And creating those student development. And then lastly, 6.3, reflectively evaluate, communicate about, and implement laws, rights, policies, and regulations to promote student and adult success and well-being. Again, the local government is the one implementing these things. They're actually out there doing it. They're not deciding it, writing the laws, or determining them. They're the ones implementing it. And they also are the ones creating these regulations within their schools that they want to see. Okay, and the regulations designed to help promote student success. So, in my opinion, all three of those I think are most well shown in the local government. Not that other levels don't use them. I just think the local government has the biggest impact with it. And then lastly, how does all this support the educational success and well being of each student and adult? I think we have a tiered system developed where you have general policies and protections and ideas coming from the federal level. And then the state level takes those policies and those guidelines and refines it and fits it to the needs of their state with its various curriculum and standards and expectations. And then it's up to the local jurisdictions to take those guidelines from the state and actually put them inside the school. So the federal government kind of deals with the big picture. Hey, the Common Core, this is what we want to see, that type of stuff. Um, then the state level is kind of removed from the oversight of the actual thing. They boil it down to what's important, what they actually want to see, the bare bones of it, and then they pass it down to the local government, which has the local connections, the direct connection with the community and the students to actually put the best practice in. And those are the sources. Thank you for listening.